Video is on. Okay, it is 4:33. This is David McBride. I'm going to call the Property Reuse Committee special meeting agenda to order. This is Wednesday, May 3rd. For a roll call, there is Lauren Gothier online, Bob Frink, Dave McBride, and Larry Dunn is present. That's 4, which does make up a quorum. So we'll continue to move on. And I just want to say there was some discussion and some concern. This agenda that came out, when I set it up, I used a prior agenda that we had to do for 4:30. As a result of that, it caused some issues with the majority of the committee who thought this meeting was going to take place at 5:30. So since we have a quorum, I'd like to for the people here to consider if we should recess or if we should not at least take up any serious actions until the remaining members of the committee can be here at 5:30. So I open it up for discussion on that matter.
I make a motion to recess until 5:30.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Motion has been made to recess till 5:30 by Lauren, seconded by Bob Frink. Any discussion?
I mean, is there anything we can do?
I will say
yeah,
that I do have to hop off here while I get my kids out of the car and settled in. So I'll have to leave the meeting and then you'll lose a quorum.
Ah, okay. Well, that kind of ends that discussion.
Okay, and I think it's probably best we do that to get everybody involved after all the work everybody's put in, especially last meeting seemed very productive. So any other discussion?
Nope.
All in favor of the motion to recess, say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Lauren, I think you were late. You were in favor of the motion, correct?
Yes,
Yes,
I made
the
it.
motion. Came in late. Okay, motion passes 4-0. So we will recess this meeting until 5:30. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, Lauren. See you.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is David McBride. We had called the meeting to recess due to an administrative error on the time of the meeting change. We are now bringing this meeting back to order at 5:30 for the Property Reuse Committee. We have everyone in attendance with the exception of Councilor Bordelon, who has texted saying she will be here shortly. That's John Goodrich, Hal Zod, Larry Dunn, Lauren Gothier, David McBride, and Scott Westervelt. So any public comments? I think I see one individual. Does the individual online have any comments or are they just listening in? If they'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay, we have Ian Thomas. I believe you're able to speak, Ian?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to commend everyone on the work so far, and I'd like to kind of sit in and participate on the periphery like I did last time, if that's all right.
Yeah, I don't see any objections. Everybody comfortable with that? Yep. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks. I also want to thank everyone. Last meeting I was not available, and thank you, Councilor Westervelt, for chairing the meeting. That was very helpful, and it seemed like from what I've listened to and read, you guys accomplished a great deal. So thank you for that. That's good news. I do unfortunately have another item this evening at 7 o'clock, so I need to leave at 6:30. So I apologize once again. Maybe somebody else should take over the chair of this committee if I can't be here at these meetings. So I apologize. Hearing that, I'm actually going to kind of toss it over to Councilor Scott Westervelt to kind of something we're at, because you've gone through most of this process, but I know Lauren was significantly involved on where we're at, and it sounds like we've gotten to number 8 or number 9. You kind of plowed through. Maybe that's a great starting point to not to review all the information that's already been worked on, but to start where you left off. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure, just as a point of order, we skipped over the communication section, which I think would be a good part to bring what John got from community member.
Yep. So I spoke to Eric Goodman, who owns Cape Lake and Company, he's a developer, building the standard in downtown Mystic. He's also the chair of the Historic District Commission. After our meeting last night, he was interested in attending our meeting. He's followed these meetings and read our document, has some input, which I'll let him speak, but I thought most of it was very positive. toward our work and the direction we're going in. Also, he had just had some, from a developer's point of view, suggestions. I think it'd be worthy for us to hear that, and at our next meeting, let us know when he'd like to show up.
Is there anything we can incorporate tonight?
So honestly, I didn't write it down, so I don't want to speak for him. I know one, let's say one area of critique, for lack of a better word, is he says on our document at one point that, we have town has other means available to them to dispose of property, including auction. That concerned him because if there's no way to vet the person bidding, if we don't have a process to vet the bidders, it could allow the purpose of this committee to kind of have a backdoor out.
So I think, haven't we talked about this? If that's the choice of the council to sell a property via auction, it obviously will go through this process, right? Because you're selling it, right?
Yeah, I think that was discussed early on.
But
And
that's
it goes,
specific to foreclosures? Or
yes,
can they do that?
foreclosures and tax issues and so forth. And it's usually a pretty regulated process that the assessor and the collections area has to go through. So I think that's why it was removed, because there is a process in place for that. And they have, I don't know exactly what they have, so many days, they have like 6 months to recoup, pay the interest back, and they recoup their property back, but it's a really regulated process. So
The other thing he brought up too, and again, I want him to speak, so I'm kind of shooting from the hip and I don't want to be off, is he thought there should maybe be a dollar amount difference on what we put through this process and not. So for example, if there's a 10-foot strip of property, let's say Laura and I are neighbors and one of us wants to buy it and it's a $10,000 transaction, then it shouldn't have to go through this committee because it's a smaller town-owned property.
There's regs on when we have to, which is what, 10,003 acres, I think?
I'm not sure about the acres, but 10,000.
Yeah, I've never heard of anything about acres, but 10,000 you have to go.
I think I should get a higher dollar amount. I pulled that dollar out, but for
My only concern was that at the end of a lot of what we've seen there, and what you will see with government, hey, Portia. What you see in a lot of these things is they end up selling for $1. So what do we put the dollar amount on? The assessed property of the land? Or
I believe that was where he was going. And again, it was kind of a conversation where I didn't write this down and I don't want to be off, but
it's something to consider, thresholds.
Yeah, some of his positive things where he goes, as a developer, he thinks we're going in a great direction. From dealing with other towns, he says nothing we're doing here is like crazy weird stuff. It's actually pretty boilerplate that other towns do. So it's good we're coming into this. So again, I'll stop letting him speak next week, but it was a lot of very positive comments on the work we're doing, and he thought it was.
Yeah, certainly have provide his comments along with any other residents, right? That's what we're looking for, is more
I
feedback.
just want to apologize for being late.
Yeah, Councilor Borderland joined at 5:36. So everyone's aware. Okay, good. Any other public comments?
I'll take copious notes next time.
Okay.
Any other communications? Anyone?
I just want to respond to the communication that was stated. I think that's great. I didn't even think of the thought of making sure we have a developer look at our document. I think that's great. So I might brainstorm and think of other developers that I may know that can kind of take a look at it. It'd be great for them to kind of see what we're putting forward, since they see these documents quite often.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Have we reached out to the EDC specifically? We're going to put them on as a liaison, but have we asked them specifically for their review?
We haven't asked them since we reached out initially to the 5 or 6 various agencies. But that's probably a good idea. We can do that once this is in better shape.
I mean, we can. And I think we should, but we did already extend, and they didn't send anybody. Is that correct?
Yes, they had appointed,
Yeah.
or
So
I was told somebody was going to be involved, but that individual never came forward.
Right. So the door has been open from the beginning.
Yes. Any other public comment or communications? No. Okay. Approval of minutes. I don't believe we have the minutes from the 19th meeting completed. Correct? We do not. Yeah. So we'll move those to the next meeting. They will be ready for next. Okay. Great. Okay. And next up is the old business, which is the process. So I'll get back to where we were at. I'll kind of defer to Councilor Westerville, I think we were at 8 or 9, somewhere around there.
I believe we stopped at the new 7.
New 7, around the new 8.
Right,
Yep.
so
Okay.
in the packets, the yellow sections are kind of wordsmithing a little bit. Instead of having representative, I put liaison. I think we had a discussion that would be a better fit and kind of builds more into this is an advisory committee. It's not a decision-making body, it's advisory, so you have liaisons. That's where the yellow is more things that I changed that weren't directly from our last discussion. But again, just mostly wordsmithing. I did take action to rewrite that section. It was 6. I think 5, the TOPE committee will hold at least one meeting talking about the 500-foot radius for notifying property owners. So that was a little bit of change there to the consideration.
You're at, or?
It's now 5. In the new packet.
Back to your comments on 2 here, yellow, the liaison.
Yes.
Liaison's still a member,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
It's not a,
it's a member, but I didn't want, because the concern that I heard from the council was, oh my God, we can't even get people to sit on our current committees. How are we going to find another 14 new people to sit on this new committee? And hearing that, I think using instead of the term member or representative, liaison conveys more of the fact that, oh, I'm already on a committee and I'm just going to take on another meeting once a quarter, which is totally normal. Everybody has them, the RTM, council, et cetera, has liaisons. And I think that's a much more familiar and comfortable kind of term and much more apt to what we're trying to do here. If folks agree, if you don't like the word liaison.
well, as long as it's clear that liaison isn't something less than a member.
No.
You know?
Nope.
Okay.
The entire thing is it's staff council. And I think
My understanding in having it as a liaison, they didn't have to meet their quorum requirements. Is that correct?
That's why we did something that's ex officio too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it opens up the chances to keep meetings running in the event that we're down on numbers.
Right. Right. So you basically need to rely on that core of counselors and RTM members, and then liaisons kind of buffer out the rest.
Well, then a liaison is not the same as a member.
I think it's a voting member, right? They can vote on the committee and workshop it. I think Portia speaking to more like an FOI forum thing.
I don't have it in front of me, but I know that I'm not 100%, but I know with one of them that you may not need them, but we can ask that later to meet quorum requirements. Yeah, ex officio. Like I'm a liaison to the athletic committee, but if I don't go, like I'm not. They restructured it to make liaisons because people weren't able to meet the meetings, and so therefore they can still move business without holding anything up.
Okay, so yeah, that's something definitely to consider then. How it would change the quorum requirements, and if we're comfortable with that.
Yes.
So do you want to go back to calling them a member or a representative, or can we put language in there that says, this shouldn't affect the quorum count?
Yeah, the language should be the membership consists of.
Membership consists
of. Okay, and then they function as liaisons or something. I don't know. But, and a quorum is less than name a quorum.
Yeah.
If I could just throw in an opinion or a thought, and it doesn't have to, I recommend that we move from where we left off, get through the document. That way we have our first read, and then we should go back and tweak anything else that we see that we think may need to be changed, that we may have changed already, just for time's sake and getting through this document in an efficient manner. I would recommend that we start off from where 7 and 8 is, move forward through the document, and then go back to any further edits on things that we've already touched.
I agree.
Amenable to that.
Yeah, I think that was the plan.
And just if anyone has any notes on any of those other sections, let's add them. But that would be part of our second read. The goal would be to get this document done so that we have a first read that we can then edit.
So you explained the yellow. What was the blue?
The blue is what we have not touched from Portia's or Councilor Borderline's edits. And I think there were some of that was also
they're also they're the same as last time. I think last time I was one color. I think Ian had submitted another color, and this color now is a combination of all the edits that were submitted that we have not reviewed. So it's the same wording and paperwork as our last meeting. It just has not been worked yet. So if we start where we left off around 7 or 8, we can pick up from there.
So we're gonna start at 8, correct? That's where we left off?
Yeah,
Okay, all right, so let's take a look at 8 and take a read through it, and anyone who has comments, let's modify.
Minor thing, 8B, each agency / commission. Most of us are commissions.
And Lauren, you're editing on the fly, is that right? Okay.
Written copy.
Yeah. So one of the things I did change in 8 was make a discussion of each item in section 4. That way we don't, because I thought the original language in there, the draft initial report, we can't be issuing a final draft report. So the final report would be that discussion of each item in section 4.
Is this what's out there? Is this a should or is this a shall?
In that first sentence, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, I think it's a shall.
Shall.
We talked a little bit earlier about what I would refer to as a speed checkout or speed lane here, that where some of the requirements may be relaxed for smaller properties. Is that what you were suggesting?
Threshold, yeah.
Yeah.
Would that apply to some of the items on this report? I mean, or that they just wouldn't be there? I mean, there may not be any public information received from the public. I mean, so if there isn't any, there isn't any.
Yeah, it's not applicable.
If possible, could we project the document? I have it in front of me as well, but it would be great to have it up.
Let me log into the Zoom and I'll.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
I think no matter how small a property is, what little quarter of a piece of a shard it is, going down the entire list of things, still completely valid. We'd be done with it in 5 minutes. Has no value, don't care about it, all these things, but it's worth noting because one thing might pop up. Say, but there's a utility cost. It could come up.
It's good for consistency too, and any legal issues that you didn't follow the process.
So we don't bypass the TOP committee. Right.
I don't,
Yeah.
yeah, I think also if we try to add additional thresholds, we might start running into issues with the charter. Since the charter does set that threshold for our TM approval at 10,000. So if it's below, if it is really just like a sliver of land, 10,000. And then you've got to think kind of logically, if it is appraised at a higher value than 10,000, maybe there is some additional significance to it, given where it's located physically in town. Like if it's in a very kind of busy area, well, do we really want to just let anyone put anything there? You know, that kind of thing. So I think the $10,000 threshold still stands. And it's just a more simplified process if it's a less complicated property.
I have a question on F. Is there a minority recommendation? Is that a minority recommendation is limited to members, liaisons? What about, the third category?
Ex officio.
Yeah, ex officio. Can they provide a minority opinion?
I would think that it would be limited to membership because ex officio is public absolutely can't because they're not part of the committee, so they're not issuing. And ex officio is merely advising.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's why I'm asked. Should we clarify it? Yeah.
Dave, could you promote me so that I could project?
Well, it starts off with the TOP advisory committee will generate. Defines who's doing
Right.
the reporting.
That's true. Yeah.
That's true. It's the committee.
John, your big husband went.
Nope.
Good duck.
On G, should there be any reference to POCD, even though it's in the, somewhere it's in one of the objectives, as I recall.
I think that that's captured in A. By reference 4 and in 4 is gold, which has a reference.
Is that okay? Is that in 4?
Because that's what people enlarged for.
It doesn't say POCD. It's in the goals, but it doesn't say it in 4.
So in 4, I think it's H. How does the recommended use address the goals of the TOB advisory committee?
The overall.
Back up the goals.
Okay, which gets us to goals. Okay.
Should the report include the, like a video of the public hearing or anything like that? Now with Zoom, we have more information to provide.
You could reference it. I wouldn't include it.
Yeah,
That would be
I would-
in public comment.
I think it should be added in the notes, maybe like date, time.
Yeah,
Because right now, we're just including written information, but nowadays there's more than just written information.
right.
Well, like most people, unfortunately, like our town council meetings, sometimes, I mean, if you've never watched a town council meeting, you would think that nothing goes on. But in fact, if you actually read those minutes, half the things, emotions, some things are put in there like point of orders on certain folks and not on others. But when you actually watch the meeting, things are much more deliberated. Even public comment is way more detailed in a video. So in fact, I think, I agree, yeah. I think most people know if they want more meat and potatoes to refer to that video, but I think referencing that in the final document for more detailed information, please watch video and we can have it, kind of in a note at the end. My concern is that we're already being, we're already being under the radar for size of document. So I just think the less that we put in and it puts the ownership on someone to kind of seek it, we'll make sure it's in the report as to which one to watch, date and time.
Yeah. I think that's important, especially since if you're going to be referencing public comment, it's not just the written public testimony we receive, it's also what's spoken at meetings and hearings. I will note that part of the policy does state that any video recordings need to be kept in the RFP file. So that file is comprehensive and includes that. Ian's hand up?
Yeah, Ian, are you there?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Just a quick note on the minority recommendation discussion point. I thought perhaps the liaisons and ex officios would not be the ones that could they could contribute to a minority recommendation, but it would have to be, say, sponsored by a full-time member. I thought maybe that could be a way we could split the difference.
Would that mean that they would be contributing to the majority opinion if sponsored by an opinion or another member? Right. It's not just the minority.
There's no talk of sponsorship here. Anybody. There's nothing that defines that a recommendation has to be sponsored. Period.
I think it's valid for the report to say there's an agreement that these 5 things are true. However, there was disagreement on this point.
Yeah.
Well, then I think an ex officio should be able to weigh in.
Right.
And have that weigh in the report.
Well, but think about it this way. The only time that sponsorship wouldn't consider the ex officio's commentary or opinion would be when no one from the committee agrees with them, right? And that would be the only time they'd be disenfranchised from providing a minority report, in which case they have other venues being, they can go to that public hearing themselves and testify as an individual. They can submit comment to the town council specifically, hey, I'm an ex officio on this board. I have a completely different opinion.
They could submit in 8D here.
submit it in 8D.
8D is the copies of all written information received from the public, so.
Right, so they could
Right.
get it, they'd have the draft in front of them and say, this isn't going where I want to go, submit it that way. I think the issue is opening up the powers of an ex officio member. And like I said, if an ex officio and a member are to agree on something and it's a minority opinion, then it would just come from the membership, right?
Well, I also believe that the power is in the people. And so, you know, as an elected official, you know, I don't sit up there to make decisions solely based on my own opinion. I seek the input of my constituents and other professionals, sometimes changing my position the night of or the day of, or, you know, so I do think their opinion will be captured. But yeah, it would be the onus of the committee to listen to the committee and provide their input in the document.
And I mean, if we look at who the ex officios are, that'd be the Historic District Commission, who everyone likes to ignore anyways.
That's why I'm making a point out of it.
I think the town, right, isn't that we made those folks ex officio as well?
Yep.
So, I mean, we go back again, why did we make town staff ex officio? Well, this is people centric, and if we have the town staff now providing minority opinions, that could start steering things. You know what I mean? Like, does it make sense for them to be providing opinions on the disposition of a property that they're supposed to be neutral in the adjudication of that RFP and selection of the developer? Right.
Not at this point.
I think that's a pretty powerful statement that you just stated.
Right. I mean, if the town staff are the ex officios and they are supposed to be a neutral party in administering these RFPs, getting the developer responses, working with the selection committees, does it make sense for them to be issuing an opinion right up off the top? I think we should be doing X with this property, or I don't think we should do X with this property. I don't think that's appropriate.
Oh.
That's a bit of a gray area.
If it's a minority opinion, then it follows all the other explanations and the logic street and everything else.
Right.
So then we have all our logic. Here's what we think it should be, and here's the idea. And oh, by the way, something we were going to add to number 4 here was historic significance. Just added it. So we already have to comment on historic significance.
It is. It's number G.
Okay.
Letter G.
Okay.
4G.
Yeah.
The latest.
Too many.
I know. All right, I think we beat that one.
Just a thought. Oh, sorry. I was
Yes,
going to say just a thought for time's sake. If we want to go through again in other documents I worked on, if we can get this first read done, we can add a terms section and definitions to what each thing means in the end under the second read. We can fine tune it, but if we can just get the first read done, I would encourage that. I think these are great points, but I really just want to get through the document for the substance, the meat, the potatoes, and then we can come back and fine tune a little of what it really would mean or not mean in the terms and definitions at the end section.
Yep.
So moving on to 9. So my comment 9 is the first time that there'll be, so the TOPE is not going to hold any public information hearings other than the normal public comments in our meeting.
I'm sorry. Can we actually just back up real quickly to G of number 8? I want to make sure that we are completely sound in saying satisfies or comports with the town policy on the reuse of that property. What is the town policy?
It's the goals.
Is that the goals?
Yeah.
Should we say should we say the goals?
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want that to be construed as, oh, we have to create another policy.
Right.
Or there's going to be the question, do you actually mean the POCD?
Goals.
I think we just take it out to comports with the aforementioned goals in this document. I mean, just truncate it right to that. Don't you guys think so?
Yep.
We could also cover town policy in the document, what it means under terms and conditions.
I think this is the town policy.
Yeah.
Definitions. I'm sorry,
Already
definitions.
in town policy. Yep.
It's not hard. It's goals. To me.
So just that makes sense.
So on to 9.
Okay, so my concern is here, why would we have, let's say, extraordinary communication methodology on this public hearing different from any other public hearing? You know, why wouldn't the regular, normal public hearing noticing be adequate?
Because this, as it's written, is not a public hearing. A public information meeting is not
Okay,
identical to a public hearing.
so a standard public information meeting.
Right, so the difference here is, think of a public information meeting more as something that that we get to come up with the script and choose the actors and who gets to talk when, as opposed to a public hearing where it's really just a citizen's petition, right? There's different rules on posting. You don't have to notice as much, or there's different rules with a public information meeting. So a lot of times you'll see that used in lieu of a public hearing because people think it's the same thing, but they don't actually live up to the same standards.
Well,
There's not the same questioning and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but you've got to hold a public information meeting to gather citizen input. So how are they getting citizen input and information?
That's what you do. That's what a public information meeting is.
So
Information.
Well, it's just they had it, or they had us put stickers on everything. That's a public
Yeah,
information
that's
here.
a public information
Yeah.
meeting, but it's not a.
So that's getting
public
input.
Hearing is a very specific legal.
public here's the details of the proposed
hearing.
reuse.
It's a presentation
Okay.
of the
That's
report,
what's the presentation.
the presentation of the report and to get a little informal. feedback.
So back to my question, is that something Hope would do, or is that something that town council would do?
This says.
I know what it says. I'm just asking.
After 9 is, we kick the report out the door. It's yours, right?
And that's it.
It's yours.
So
So
the way that I see that area is one of the, I would say, criticisms and complaints, which I think are valid, is people in the areas that are being the most affected with certain development at certain times or not being noticed or notified in a way that they felt was inclusive and they weren't brought to the table earlier on. So the reason that this is more kind of, telescoped in is to really, it's going to affect each area differently. And so that's why there's that intense outreach and public input, because you want those that are being affected to be brought into the table early.
Yeah, except that in paragraph 5, we've done that. Right.
prior to the report, this is now the issuance of the report.
Yeah, I know, but the neighbors, everybody knows the property's up for reuse. So people who want to engage in it are engaging in it at that point. Is it? Right.
Yep, but it's redundant.
Well, I don't think it's done, except I think right now we're going to the town council. So 5 is, hey, you're dealing with the top, we're gonna go to town council and they give us their feedback. Their feedback may agree with the minority report rather than the majority report. Now it's in the town council. They've got a second sort of bite at the apple. Am I understanding that correctly?
Many bites at the apple, but yes.
I was gonna say, section 5 does not limit it to one meeting. If something were important enough that we needed to go get, or the TOP needed to go get more information and come back and invite the public back again, that's left open here for them to be able to do that.
So the way I see number 5 is it opens up the door, right? We establish, we're bringing in the people, we're opening up the process that, the gates, the floodgates are open. And then in number 9, we're taking those floodgates and implement it. It's closing the circle. Now we're implementing the process with those people and the input. That's why it may seem redundant.
What has occurred?
The council is.
Oh, the council's on check.
Heard by that.
But the implication is the town council presents, wouldn't the TOP who actually wrote the report, present the report if the town council agrees?
I think that this is just, we send an email. And then the onus is on them to read the report and set the meeting. And the other thing you can think about with the public hearing is public information meeting, you can allow a dialogue.
No.
So again, this is now on the onus of the decision makers, on them. And the way I read it now is it requires them to do that proactive outreach to folks.
No problems with the meeting. I'm just saying, I would assume town council wouldn't then say, if they accepted the report, why wouldn't the TOP then lead that public hearing? Because they provided the report.
Because we're not decision makers.
But
We-
public hearing doesn't
Be
do,
advised, right?
doesn't do, I'm sorry, the information exchange doesn't do decisions either.
I'm 100% sure that the TOP would support the meeting, but at that point, it's not ours anymore. Our duty is to the town council, right?
Right.
Our duty is to advise the town council. And then it's. the
Maybe
duty of
there
the
should
town
be,
council to take that
maybe there should be a,
advice.
maybe there should be a joint meeting at that time. I'm just trying to think of other advisory committees, like, I don't know, they submit the report and then council either goes to those meetings or rewatches meetings, and then it gets on the agenda and we make decisions. But in other situations, in certain situations, sometimes there is a joint meeting. If an issue's pressed, again, depending on which council is up there and who's on the council, I think a joint meeting at some point when we present what we're going to submit to them in writing, I think it should be maybe a joint meeting. But again, it could go either way.
If the council chooses, nothing prohibits them from doing an additional meeting, right?
I thought, as you said, I think our task is to come up with a report. That's way more than the council now has, which has been a consolidation of all the information we've gotten from all the paragraphs. And now they got this wonderful document that they've never had before, including things in the back. People disagreed with some of them.
Right.
And now they say, okay, this is what we've come up with. Now it's time for you to adopt it, or maybe have the council people, maybe you guys can then say, now we'll have a hearing or an information. And I'd like to have the rest of us here to support it. That's fine, but that's not, we don't need to do that anymore. We've done our job. We don't want to amplify the job and have yet another big meeting of all of everybody on the board.
So
Because it needs to be better defined, it needs to be closely defined. Okay, we got it, done.
So maybe it just need the wording needs to be massaged. It's not the town council presenting the report. The town council is taking the next step in the process of providing information to the public or something according to those lines. It's not presenting the report that the TOP's provided. It's taking the next step in the process.
right.
But one of the things
that though.
One of the things that I always see as a deficiency sometimes is the fact that we get these reports, but we don't get the platform to ask the questions that could be FOIable on the record. We can shoot an email to the manager and say, can you clarify line number 4 or whatever. I think the purpose or the point of having the people around the table who write a document is so that the people can do their due diligence and ask the questions pertaining to the document that they wrote. Not having them there, you know, I mean, how many emails would I have to send to thread out what line number 4 meant and who suggested line number 4? I would know.
So what comes to mind on all the points shared are a few things, right? We don't want to be too restrictive or conscripting or proscripting, whatever script you want to throw in there. We don't want to be telling the town council too much what to do. And that mostly stems from many conversations I've had with the town manager about what the RTM can and can't not tell the town council what to do. So that's one thing, right? We're not here to direct them. We're here to advise. And I think that the way it holds now is that includes whether or not the council wants to invite the TOP to have that.
That's fair.
Right. The second thing is we've got to consider what a TOP who's running at high efficiency, high speed, doing all the things it's supposed to be doing. We might not be doing one property a quarter. We could be doing 5 properties for the course of several months. Do we have time to sit down to a town council meeting for several hours every single week or a public hearing? You know what I mean? Like, what's the time constraint going to be if we have all of these advisory reports we're issuing because we have multiple properties running at the same time? That's how I envision them. I would envision that to be a positive aspect of this process, is that we're able to do multiple things at once. And so, yes, it would be great to support every single meeting. We want to restrict liaisons on having to be there if that would mean multiple hearings in a week or a month. And no offense to the counselors here, oh my God, your meetings are long. Like, do I want to sit down for a long town council meeting?
I respect your comments. But the other concern is too, we don't really have that many properties. I mean, in retrospect, when we look at what can be developed, unless they all, you know, I mean, if they all went up at the same time, we'd be done. And then we might be just maintaining unless somebody leaves or wills us the property, or something goes in foreclosure, we obtain a property, or we decide to purchase some property. Other than that, I mean, I think once this is streamlined, we just closed all of these schools. Well, not just, but they've been doing it over the last 10 years. There's really not that much property left to be had. So I share your concerns, Representative Gauthier, but I don't know that eventually it might feel like a chokehold, but it's going to open up.
So with all due respect, Councilor Bartlett, I disagree. The town owns a lot of property. Just because it's in a certain bucket or silo today doesn't mean somebody's not going to change it in the future. And I think having the ability to be able to move, and I think early on you may have a lot of developers go after the properties that are available, which may mean early on we're working on 5 at the same time.
The school properties are the main ones for development. After that, you're small 1 or 2 acres and less and less.
0.03.
I mean, it's, yeah.
But that's not to say that we're not going to have developers asking us to look at the unrestricted open space.
Careful. There's legal.
That's a whole,
legal.
yeah, that's a whole,
It's a whole other thing.
It might be something that's.
But utilized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
To be underutilized.
with all due respect, you got the property across the schools built on that was supposedly restricted.
And look how long it took to get through that mess.
You've got
But it happened.
Colonel Ledger, they supposed restricted
And
deed
now-
that
and
nobody's
now we
paid
have
attention
a
to.
That can support a developer in their argument.
Right.
of Getting those things.
This will not help that. That you had to go back to the state of Connecticut. You had to go back with legal arguments. You had to do trade-offs. You had to beat.
Okay, but no, but hang on. You've got a supposed restricted deed at Colonel Ledger. That's not stopping anybody. You had a supposed restricted deed at knowing school property that almost got run over. So I'm not as trusting as you. I'll be very frank.
It has nothing to do with trusting. No banks.
Not as, yeah.
Things.
Well,
We're gonna go off topic. Let's get back to the first sentence of number 9.
Right. The town council shall hold a
Your
public
point,
information
You
meeting.
pitched it to the town council. Now,
Right. Pitch it to the
how
council.
should that be worded is really what we're looking at.
Shall hold a public information meeting to present the report to gather citizen input on the potential next steps prior to acting on the recommendation.
So
I
the
believe
question
the
back to
recommendation- Sorry.
back to your original question was, is it present the report or is it's that question that you had? Is
Well,
it-
yeah, because the town council may say, sure, I reject the report. I want to do this. So they're not, you're saying you have to present the report that we gave you versus no, the town council, for your point,
Right.
should be presenting whatever the hell they want to present.
I am Councilor Gauthier. I received this report. It's garbage. This is what we're doing. That's my meeting.
Yeah.
Presented the report as garbage. So, I mean, it's still, I mean, they're still following the.
Well,
If,
no.
if desired, town council shall,
Okay.
if determined the next step, the town council will hold the public information, right? This is all what the town council wants to do if they want to do anything.
Is there a step missing in terms of
They may
the
reject.
report presents it to the town council?
I think you just send it. That's my thing is, and
Could just send it, but maybe having somebody present it,
then it's on the
and
record.
then it's on the record, and
Alleviates-
then that discussion happens of saying, defending it.
So between 8 and 9, there's a submittal from the TOP to the town council.
Or maybe a presentation.
I think-
An opportunity for town council or for the town council to ask the TOP specific questions before they move on to the public.
It doesn't need to be the full.
Well,
No, it doesn't.
it could be.
Could just be you guys.
It could be that it's submitted to the town council, and once it makes the agenda, we ask to be invited if needed for questions.
But
I don't think we as the TOP want to go to a meeting after we presented our stuff to the town council. I don't think we Should
I
we
respect your stance,
public
and
to
I
have
disagree.
questions asked of us directly.
Let Councilor Westervelt finish, please, Portia.
Sorry, I
think
might
once
be
you-
having a low connection, sorry.
Delay.
Yeah, I have a delay.
I think that once we, as the TOP, submit it to the town council, give them the opportunity to come back to us to ask questions. We aren't the group that needs to be questioned by the public at the next step. That's where the town council, having asked their questions of us, they're responsible for putting it to the public.
Yeah.
If
whichever
they
form-
decide to,
Hold on, let me go in order. You go second, Councilor Westervelt.
yes.
Okay, Portia, you were next. Huh?
Yeah, I can understand. I can respectfully disagree with Councilor Westervelt. I think we might be on the same page, kind of. I'm not sure. I do think if I'm part of a TOPE committee and I'm drafting my opinion on a document, I damn well better be able to back up what's in there. And so for clarification purposes, a lot of time at the council, we are handed things and there's nobody there to answer those questions in real time. Even when we're given the agenda beforehand and you read it through and you might not have a question, I don't think it's pertinent nor appropriate to send messages to the town manager that the public can't see me doing my job or answering those questions in real time. A lot of time people just send things in email. I personally feel it should be done above the board. It should be done and the community should hear the dialogue. So if the council has questions and clarifying, on the record, we should be able to state exactly what we meant by number 3 or 4. I think that's our due diligence. It's one thing to write a report. It's another to defend the report in a way that we are interpreting in the way that we intended it to be. I think sometimes things get misinterpreted. For example, look at our rules. I mean, we ran a whole budget session and they told us that we were not allowed to make an amendment on anything. We couldn't speak to an amendment. We had our 2 turns. And in fact, they found out later the attorney's opinion stated that was actually wrong. And in fact, my opinion and other people's opinion were correct. So I think it's important to have people around the table with the decisions that were written. Now, we're not pushing it on them. We're just there for clarifying questions if they need it. As a counselor, I find at times I need those clarifying questions. Sometimes when another counselor asks a question, it triggers another thought that I didn't think of when I first got my agenda, and I want to ask it in real time. So having that dialogue and opportunity is so important. It doesn't have to be the whole committee. It could be a few people who worked on the document that was submitted.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to go. John was next, and then
So and basic premise agree with Portia. I think the work that's been put into the document, just emailing it to the council is not the best handoff. I think there should be a special meeting or on the agenda. And I'm not saying it has to be a 3-hour rehash, just, here's the report, here's the highlights of the report. Do you have any questions? And I do feel for the kind of to respect the work of the committee, to make anything easier for the council and for the public, I think that there should be somewhere between 8 and 9, there should be a handoff section.
Larry was next, and then Lauren.
Yeah, I think we're circling around the same thing. There should, well, no, we agreed that we're giving them a report. Then the next step would be that the ability for the town council to hear feedback, questions and answers, whatever, on the report. That's that interim step we're talking about. So yes, something is in there for that.
Yeah.
Then the town council says, all right, now that I've heard everything, I understand it, make a decision. We're now going to go out and do a general information education session, or whatever it is.
So I workshopped in real time some language to address everyone's concerns.
Well, everyone's.
Here we go. Number 8, we shall generate a report. It shall be presented to the town council, and it must include A through G.
Okay, we'll look at that. Councilor Westervelt.
So yes, I was just trying to clarify what I was saying, and I think that we all agree there's got to be a step between 8 and 9. And we want our questions are going, town council is going to ask us questions. And we're going to satisfy the town council. Once the town council is satisfied that they understand what we were doing, then it's up to them to set a public hearing, public information meeting.
I think just,
Sorry, Hal had his hand up. Do you have any more comments?
No, and I think it's fine the way it says there, because the TOPE shall present this its entirety.
Okay.
It could be one person from the TOPE.
well, and I was just like a more clarified, shall present in person. That's what I was going to say.
What about Zoom?
Or Zoom, you know what I'm saying? Just
It's gonna
define the present is what I would like to see.
All right, so let's read 8. We're good with 8.
And I just wanted to say, I agree with that. I think it should be done above board in the public, not through emails and people asking questions. What is number? Yeah, I think it needs to be on the record for the public to hear. And again, the TOPE presenting is not trying to sway the counselor. We already did our work. We're just clarifying what we're sending.
I think I would understand that would go like at a Cal meeting.
Yes.
We would be present, or someone from the TOP committee would be present at the Cal meeting. Like we have so many people come up in front of us and give us. Okay.
I also think it's important when we did our first presentation to the council, many times we had to say, no, that's not what we're saying. And then we got responses back with, oh, this and this and this. And we said, no, read that again. This is what we're saying. We are, doing this. I think it's so important to just not hand off something cold without people clarifying it.
All good comments. So now we're at 9.
Yeah.
Yes.
You keep trying to get to 9.
So
So
we
I
just need to massage that a little bit.
Yep.
Because it's now, as you indicated, it's at the council. Bob,
Yeah, so I still have a problem with, I guess, the third sentence where it starts off with the town shall conduct additional and all that. I'm still thinking whatever the normal public information communication methods are would be adequate at this point, that the flood has occurred, the floodgates were open. And Scott, maybe your feelings as a neighbor of a property that was under development. Do you think at this point you would need to be specifically invited, or would you would be aware at this point, right? I mean, the TOP has had meetings, we've communicated to everybody.
I think at that point, yes, I should. I don't know that we need to go through another round of notifications.
Right.
If I've been involved and went and saw the first of it, I should personally be prepared.
At this point, you're engaged.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
So-
there are those that will not have been able to make the first. And they may not have been able, they may be also, it may come down to new neighbors coming into the area.
But they will know what's going on. They haven't.
They may or may
participated.
not, depending, they may not, it may have not, like, say there's 30 days between this point and this point, and you get a family that moves in that has a valid point to make. They may or may not know that this is going on.
shouldn't all the outreach be identical wherever there's outreach? I mean, why is there different?
So that's, I agree. I was gonna say the same thing. I think it should be the same. The other thing to Councilor Westervelt's point though is, and this comes up on the Historic District Commission from time to time, you have a summer resident, right? They're like, well, they got that approval in January. They started construction in June. I came in June because I'm here for the summer and I was past my 15-day appeal process. So I do think having the notification every time is just fair. Could be a new neighbor, could be a summer resident, could be.
And then you can't have anybody come back and say they didn't get
Right.
an opportunity.
If I may add, or I'll raise my hand if you just want to call me.
Go ahead, Portia.
No, I'm just going to say, one of the things I found out about, a lot of times things are presented and it's presented in a way that it's, signed, sealed, delivered. You're like, wow, that sounds amazing. And then you do more research and then you do more research. And then other people come out and say, hey, this is happening over here. I think having this, from what I've seen happen so far historically in our town, is some people don't get excited until they realize, oh, it's this many. Because a lot of times it's just, oh, the development's coming. The numbers are not finalized until later. Usually you get a second wave of people rising up to speak up about their neighborhood or their area or their location or the impact. So I do think, yes, you want to catch people that are moving in, or maybe, a lot of people said they didn't hear about certain things until it was in the newspaper. By then it was like blown way up. So I do think having a catch basin obviously targeted to that particular area only is important, but I think it's we can't not do enough, and then that's the most important thing.
Okay, Lauren, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think we addressed this whole issue in number 5, wherein we put up that big sign and required large notice of public meeting on the potential development site, emailing those. This I added on the development distribution list. I think something Reiner said he has. He's got a distro list, and may include posting on websites, providing notice, blah 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 blah. Then you go notice of this committee meeting in particular. In this part shall also be promoted on the town website, social media platforms, forwarded to the RTM, etc. I think we can just lift this language and plug it there and change the appropriate names of
I agree.
hearings or whatever. And then there's consistency, there's proactive outreach as we've already defined it.
And it's not a mile.
And it's not.
Is that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, is that lifting number 5? Because I think lifting number 5 would just be perfect.
Yes.
I am in complete agreement then.
In number 5, you're just noticing the first meeting. Right,
then
so
you're
all
taking-
you know is the address of the property, the PIN number. You don't have any suggestions yet. Nobody has any ideas, anything. It's just time and place, the property card information. That's it.
And now this is, hey, we've got some ideas. Let's talk about it.
Well, it'd be a lot easier the second time because now we have everybody's name. Already done the process once. So
Except those guys just.
And the summer residents.
Should follow the same process. So 9 is, we're finished with 9. Then. You're follow the same process.
I'm going to
yes.
edit this.
But when it says the town shall conduct, do we mean the town staff?
Yep.
Who's that?
The town council authorizes it, town council authorizes it, and usually the town staff organizes it. Yes.
Who's going to canvass the neighborhood? We're not doing that, right? So
It's a may, not a shall.
Now, the canvassing of the neighborhood, sometimes some eager developers have come in and said, we'll go out and hold a public meeting once, you know, there's things happening. So, you know, it's good to have, or sometimes it's the town just typing up something to put out. I mean, it's good to have in there depending.
So 10.
We're on 10. So I need to move on to another meeting. So I'd like to make I don't know if I'd make a motion or a call to move to.
No, you just assign.
Assign, or
Yeah.
I think I asked them and they said the committee's got to vote. So I'm going to make a motion to nominate Councilor Westervelt to take over as chair of the meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion has been seconded and thirded. All in favor? Aye. Thanks.
So
Thank you,
David and
Council.
then Hal.
Yes.
Just for time's sake, what time do you guys want to work till tonight? I just want to know.
6:35. Just joking.
7.
7. I mean,
Well,
7.
we can get through 14. Come on, we got one.
how about so we get through number 15?
I just need to know.
15? I don't have
Besides,
15.
And then for Counselor McBride, before he leaves, we probably should set the next meeting time and date and make sure it's at 5:30.
5:30 next week. Is that?
Yeah, 5:30 next week.
I'll set that up.
Next Wednesday.
Thank you, everyone.
I think there's an RTM budget meeting. I think we start at 7 though, so I'll just bounce then. It's not like I'm not important, but you don't base it on me. But yes, 5:30.
And I'll be back in a couple minutes.
So you want to take a recess, please?
Are we taking a recess?
I just,
That'll give me a second to
All right,
wordsmith this
perfect.
change.
Okay.
Are we all good with a recess? 5 minutes?
Yeah, you gotta put it on.
Pause the-
Okay.
You gotta pause the recording.
All right.
Okay.
We are back from recess and we are at step 10 of our process.
I don't see the camera on the group anymore, but
That's because I'm presenting. Here I am presenting.
oh, my screen came back. I was on the wrong screen. Sorry.
Okay. I figured out where the 15 came from. It was an erroneous space in the middle of a different paragraph.
Oh, okay.
really worried. We're like,
We might not make 15, we could get 14.
14. It's number 10.
7.3-2.
So here's my issue. We're changing up the nomenclature again in that first sentence, public hearing and not informational.
I thought this was.
Now the public hearing, right, on 10, because we've got the public, because it says a public hearing no fewer than 28, no more than 35 days after the public informational hearing.
Okay, so we're making them put us on their agenda to present the report. And now we're making the town council have a public information meeting. And now we're making them have a public hearing.
No, if they agree and sign off on the document, they are accepting and are taking their own view. And this is just a recommendation, basically, to the town council. They can say, I don't like 35 days, we'll do it in
We
60.
changed that shall to may.
No,
And here's the thing is, so up here, when I grabbed the wording out of section 5, I added in that the noticing for that public hearing shall be no fewer than 10 days and no more than 30. So I guess the only difference I see between 9 and 10 is the difference between an information meeting and a public hearing, and then also between 28 and 35 days after.
I mean, technically, what it really means is the town council shall hold a public hearing at their discretion, kind of, but the date.
So may hold.
Well.
Shall at their discretion.
so here's the way I look at it, in the
May.
interest of, because part of our thing, Lauren, is we're trying to get the public involved, right? So hypothetical situation, neighborhood A, the TOP does their outreach, they have their meetings. It gets kicked to the town council. Oh, guess what? I just bought a house in that neighborhood. I just finding out about this. Now I've gone to the town council public information hearing, but I have concerns.
Right.
So now I need my public hearing so I can voice my concerns. Otherwise, I've sort of been pushed out of that process. That's why I think it's critical that we have both.
Where are you going to snap the line?
I think we all agree you're gonna have both, but we're just debating on the restrictive nature of how soon after.
Yeah, I would leave it to the town council to see if they think they need any additional public input or deliberations, because I feel like that's up at that point, it's really up to them. Do they feel like they have enough engagement? Do they feel like they have enough information to go forward and make another? Because I would think that if at this informational meeting, a bunch of people came forward and went, whoa, never heard of this before. I, as a counselor, would go, okay, let's have another hearing. Let's kind of really dial in on that. At some point, you have to snap a line at whether or not people have been engaged or informed, or when they, otherwise you'll never move forward in the process.
I like the May, because the next one is the statutory hearing that you have to have.
Right.
So I think that the 10 should be a May.
The 10 should be a may hold additional public hearings or informational meetings.
I would just like to say for the record, though, and I'm going to use the oral school as an example, when you had huge public outcry of we don't want it, a number of counselors, some that still sit on this council, actually literally made fun of the public. So to say that you as a counselor would act a certain way, I think some would act a certain way. I don't think we can say that everybody on this or future councils would act a certain way.
Yes, I agree. I totally hear that you can't trust counselors to be empathetic or.
Move on. that's.
When I want to get a couple shots in.
No, but I mean, seriously, just.
No, I know.
This is being formed to get the public more engaged, transparency, public engagement, and I don't want to cut anything out that.
To his point, though, there's another statutory public.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's all I was saying, right? You gotta have one.
You gotta have 11. You may have 10.
Okay.
We're saying you gotta have 9.
You gotta have 9.
Gotta have 9, you gotta.
That was my point, right? Is
You may have 10.
I would love to have endless meetings.
Yeah, but I don't want any, right.
You gotta move forward at some point.
Where does what if the town council rejects this whole idea from the get-go? They don't.
Fine.
It
That's
never
not our
gets here.
business.
It never gets here.
Never gets where.
To this public hearing, or,
Oh,
Well, that means they're not selling it.
yeah.
you can't sell it without. a public
Well,
hearing.
or even the public information meeting. They could say, no, this is a crazy idea. We're not going to present it to anybody. Right?
Well,
Say that
the way
again.
that I see that is for me, like every action has a reaction, every cause has an effect. So everything I do it with the intention, with the best interest of the constituents and the community at large. What folks choose to do with that is up to them. So even if this whole document gets shot down, what I look at is I'm on the right side of putting forward the best effort we could. So what they choose to do with it is up to them.
Right, and I think that addresses John's concern that we don't always have necessarily the leadership we think we should have. Is that diplomatic enough for everyone? It's the leadership we have.
Yeah.
But so when you put that shall hold an informational, they might hear our entire idea, but now they have to at least tell the public or let the public say something about it. right? Because between when we issue a final decision and report and when the public gets to hear it, it's already in front of the council. So this would bar, number 9 would bar against the council getting the report going, screw this, and just throwing it in the dumpster without the public ever getting our report.
Right.
This forces them to at least present it. People have the opportunity to see it, say it, something about it, hold them accountable for acting on it or addressing the concerns therein. That's I think would address John's concern.
It would.
Yeah.
Also having
said.
the document say may or shall or whatever way it goes. You know, eventually you take a person who's normally not involved in local politics and it's something that's affecting their neighborhood, and they rise up in their neighborhood or their area because they're interested in what's going there, you know, when they take an interest. They're going to read this document and say, if it makes it that far, they're going to read this document and say, hey, on line section this, it states this, how come you're not doing that? So it is nice to have stuff in here that gives everybody a checks and balance.
For the 10, 11, and 12, since we're looking at 3 hearings. 11 and 12 are required.
11 is required.
But the second one, we conduct a later process if necessary.
Necessary.
Right. So we have a total of 4 meetings, 2 required, 2 optional.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that the next, I'm thinking is that the 3 of them are hearings. So I'm thinking the next one, number 10, should actually say, because that's the next required one. Whatever that should be. Because in addition, you can have these 2 other hearings.
I like the flow of that. I agree. So move 11 to 10, 10 to 11.
Right.
Make the 2 required hearings and then the 2.
And I know the language for them becomes the same. If you have a hearing, then you must, here's what a hearing is.
I would like to, I've been live editing, hearing your comments as I do so. So I have substantially, since we agreed that 10 should likely be a more kind of optional thing for the town council, I've substantially reduced it to reflect that optional nature. My issue with reordering it is that you need to have this buffer of optional meetings between that required informational meeting presenting the report and the required statutory, because if you flip-flop it, you get to the point where
It's too late.
Okay, then it's just straight out.
I agree. I agree with
to
her.
the
I think. Oh, sorry.
Statement should be then, prior to the required public hearing for general statutes, or however you want to say that, prior to that, you may have this other hearing. Because otherwise you just don't.
I mean,
Implicit in the flow, it's explicit.
Well, I don't know, because everybody reads one thing at a time.
so I guess number 11 should read, should the council decide to sell the property, a public hearing per Connecticut general statute shall be conducted regarding the sale of real municipal property and final blah, blah, blah. And then you have all of the noticing that's required by statute and that conforms with the rest of it. Because 11 is really a, if applicable, right? If it's decided not to.
But still, you don't do it.
It's going to do something.
If it stops at 10.
If it stops at 10, it stops at 10.
Okay.
And that's
So-
another reason not to.
Mentioning the statutory meeting in 10 is putting the cart or is moving too fast, because
Gotcha.
10 may be the end of
It
it.
may be the end of it.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, you're good. It's your meeting.
No, Stop at each point, you can stop.
So modest.
Does that make more sense? Oh,
No, I get that. I wasn't considering the idea that you could stop at that point. I just saw this lump of 3 hearings.
I was on the same, you and I are on the same wavelength there.
I mean, 10, 11, 12 are actually fairly straightforward. Right?
But they all have the thing about canvassing, everything.
Yeah, it's all the same stuff in there.
So we lump all that together.
No, I like the 3. Each one is distinct.
It adds a nice timeline effect to
Right.
the policy.
Oh, no, I don't, I mean, having the requirements for the hearings.
Oh.
It's the same requirements for each one of the hearings. They should all match. than repeating
Right.
it.
The only difference in number 11 would be that all the public noticing, it looks like it's going to be for the original language, the proactive outreach actions. I think some of that is prescribed in section 7-163E, and I would worry about prescribing anything in addition to that statute, since this is a statutory hearing. I would say make everything else a may. So you hold your meeting in accordance with the statute and may do more.
Do we need to look at the statute to verify that?
Well, I don't think you want to, if it says it, anything it says in the statute, or just to verify that it has.
Well, it's, yeah, and actually that's somebody else's responsibility.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever it says in statute, that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and then put your hands up because you don't have anything else.
Right.
I mean, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that should also be promoted to the RTM and the boards and commissions for input. Well, what input are we seeking? Yeah. May, should is a good middle ground, should also be promoted on social media platforms and forwarded to the RTM. It has to go to the RTM if it's over 10 grand.
It has to go, yes.
Gotta go to us anyway.
Yep.
Town may conduct additional blah, 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 followed by blah, 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 all aforementioned actions and any other outreach. Shall
That-
be-
That's all may. The town may conduct,
the town may conduct, yep.
right?
May. No fewer than 10 and no more than 30 minutes, but just for conformity of above. What are we doing with the photos here? Do we, in the next draft, do you guys want highlights or no?
No, because the next one we should be able to read through and
Read through it and, right, any editing.
yes, and then if there are additional comments, then we can take up colors that.
A second public hearing per Connecticut general statutes will be conducted later in the process if necessary regarding the sale of real, blah, blah, blah.
Is that redundant
Uh,
to 11? I mean, didn't we just do that?
Why would we have a second public? Okay, what would be?
you'd have to read the statute.
It's the statute that's.
You'd have to read the statute. So how about we
Well-
circumvent that by saying, public hearings per general Connecticut statutes shall be conducted.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Get rid of 12 completely.
Yep. Half of it is my kid. So this screen is supposed to swivel around all the way and I can use it like a tablet.
Oh,
He tried to swivel it the wrong direction and I pinched this cord. So now everything is slightly offset with my cursor. Like I gotta hover it slightly down and to the right in order to click the thing I want to click. I really love my children giving me games to play.
So 12,
Town council shall refer any recommendation for the sale suspicious planning and under CGS.
so old 12 is out.
Yep.
Well, she's working on
and
that.
we end on step 13,
Is that a good number for you?
lucky 13.
30. So Hal, what's the right, I mean, refer to the planning and zoning, is it proper terminology for consideration or review or? Because you're not making a decision on selling it or not, you're just determining
I think
if there's if there's an issue there or not.
I think that this is premature in the process. I think the town council will make a decision on disposition, because at this point that kicks off the RFP process, in which case you go through the whole process to get a developer and then planning and zoning would evaluate the permits. I don't think that they belong this early in the process.
There's a point, but in the RFP has to have any zoning or wetlands limitations communicated to the developer.
Oh, that's fine. Is it under section 824 of the Connecticut General Statutes that they need to do that?
I don't know. I doubt it.
Is the 824 to determine highest and best use or confirm in a way, the highest and best use of the property? What?
It's not highest and best use.
No,
No,
820, that deal, yeah, I just went that course, that freaking holiday course that had that in there. And now I can't,
I have it, but it's not highest, but I wish it was highest.
it's not that.
Planning and zoning,
It's very.
It deals with, there's certain things you have to do in terms of housing and other things that,
Improvements.
yeah, so it's not, I don't think we should get into it here.
Anyone know what chapter offhand that is?
but P and Z's role is highest and best use, isn't it? It's not a,
Chapter 126.
20.
Oh, it says 126.
Oh, chapter 126.
Yeah. Municipal
you're
planning.
saying this is, I'm thinking this is late because at this point it's fait accompli.
Right.
It's been made.
Municipal improvements.
Unfortunately, it isn't the highest and best use.
So.
No.
Hold on.
No, it's not.
But that's not their,
At least once every 2 years, the commission shall
Are
prepare
you violating any of the town ordinances?
plan of conservation and development for the municipality. Okay, if the plan is not amended decennially, that's a decennially. That's an amendment to be read, not said. All right,
Once a decade.
once a decade, we do it every 10 years.
The POCD, yeah.
Preparation of such a plan. This is for the POCD.
Right.
Oh, let's be ready.
Right, yeah, let's just throw that onto our plate. Yeah, I don't think that this is applicable to this section.
It should be, it's got to be in the RFP drafting section.
I believe it, I mean, actually, I think we addressed this, right? If this section of the statutes is the POCD, we have already required the TOP to consider the POCD and
POCD,
do everything.
right.
So I think
We can strike
I
that.
think we're good on that. And all of this like public hearing such is about the POCD. So they have to have public hearings on the POCD.
I don't think we should strike it because just because the TOP makes a recommendation, we've already sort of said that the town council can go, it's garbage and throw it out.
But now we've had several public hearings.
Okay.
And once again, like, think about what the next step is after 13. They make a decision on the disposition of the property. Period. Should they decide to sell it, that would kick in the RFP process.
That's one.
And then in the RFP process, there's going to be input from planning and zoning.
Okay.
To some degree. So. There we go. We knocked
Okay.
out 2 whole. Boom. Ending on 13,
Well,
12.
But we had to stay till,
We were gonna go to 14. Do you
I was-
want to take up 2?
I was gonna say we had to stay till we got to 14. So when are we gonna leave?
We can never leave.
We can
By
never
that-
leave.
So you
California.
Our review at 1850.
So here's my question. What's the rest of this?
It's just the same thing over and over again.
One's got that.
What is that really what it is?
Yes.
It's just the same thing. Town-owned property process. Disposition of non-town owned property. Why is that even a thing? Why do we even care about non-town owned property? Can we delete that? Like,
Where does it say that?
this section shall apply in the event the town partner with the town partners with an outside entity, such as the state of Connecticut or the United States federal government to assist and promote.
So if I may, we want to consider non-town owned property could be like the Mystic Oral School, that could be a partnership
Yes.
development. So we just want to, I'm not sure what the wording should be because I'm no expert, but we want to keep in mind partnership to make sure that, someone might be selling a piece of land or the state might be, and then they might be asking us to go in on a partnership. And so I don't know what the wording should be, but we want to keep that in perspective as well.
Okay. No, understood. I didn't get that before, but totally agree with that. Is that policy, is the appropriate place for that under the TOP though? Is that what we're saying, is we want the TOP involved in partnering with that? Or is that something that we want to keep just
The PRUC.
to the PRUC? Because what's
Is
the
the word,
authority?
I'm just scanning through, is the word partnership in here, like?
Yeah. That's for the non-town owned property process.
I would think we'd go through the normal toll process for me. I don't know.
For non-town owned
Yeah.
property?
Absolutely.
Well, non-town owned, that's involved in a partnership, not somebody else's property.
So from.
Well, when you say non-owned, we're really talking about state here or federal, right?
We're talking about very specific property, not just everybody's property.
It's my turn to complain about Mosa. So at a state level, my concern with MOSA is that it was a town-owned or a state-owned property, but because the town owned the RFP, there was not much that a watchdog agency like the State Contracting Standards Board could do about the actual disposition of that property. So that was part of it. And so when we start talking about how the town is going to be involved in these partnerships, that's something to consider is how much, like if we're going to prescribe what the town's got to be doing, how much are we really wanting the town to be involved in taking over? I don't want to call it a liability, but the responsibility.
It is a liability though.
The responsibility of putting out the RFP on, because you read the first page of that MOSA RFP, it's done on the behalf of the DECD. So the DECD was not issuing it. That's, you know, I'm sure the state wants to do a lot of that so that they don't have to do as much work or they escape, you know, they use loopholes like that. But what's the responsibility we want to open the town up for by creating a policy to partner? I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but also I don't know all of the legal ins and outs of what we can prescribe onto state property or federal property, right? But they might say, oh, we don't have to do that just because you're helping us or just because we're asking your opinion.
Is there partner capital P and partner small p?
That's another big question that we have up at the board.
Yeah.
You know, is this a big P or a little p? Again, municipal stuff we don't do at the State Contracting Standards Board in general. That's why this was most of was kind of a little bit out of our hands. But
If I think that maybe there's a caveat in there that you put in there saying somewhere in the purpose, perhaps, the very first part of it is that this process may be used for non-town owned property in such cases where they lay out what the caveats are. I think you actually need to do it. Very much so. The thing that comes to mind is the thing we're all thinking about is the oral school, which bypass the whole thing.
oh, MOSA. I didn't mean to say complain about MOSA, but the state oral school.
I know, it's kind of like, whoa.
I just call it MOSA now.
That's right. So
Oral
the
school.
oral school is that planning and zoning, where originally we were kind of confronted with, you want to think about doing this kind of massage and if we can do this other thing. It never came to, how about the whole idea? Didn't come up because we didn't have a whole idea. If we had this process, we could have short-stopped the whole thing. We might not have, we might have missed it.
Well, but you know, federal land's interesting too. We have a sub base, and I mean, when I was in California, the Navy turned Alameda Naval Air Station over the city of Alameda, and they got one huge parcel of contaminated property and no way to deal with it and no way to market it. It became a nightmare for them. So we're not there yet, and hopefully we never are. But there could be the day, someday, that Groton gets a very large piece of waterfront property.
We have small pieces of property which have pollutants and toxicities in them now.
Right.
And that's the onus of the town council to not take.
Well, for foreclosure, and you're stuck with it.
Oh, yeah.
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 That's a good point. But at that point, it'd be owned by the town and we'd go through this process.
Yeah, and but right, this town property, yeah.
We don't have to worry about the name.
My
I might
thought is
get
like,
the housing area.
But again,
Never know.
the importance of this property use committee is when I joined on the council, there was a small contaminated property on Route 1, and there was all these phases that were supposed to be done. And it kind of, you know, depending on which council's involved at the time, there's really nobody kind of monitoring like, hey, that brownfield needs work. So having this property use committee where you're looking at just the sale of property, but having this document and all this way to look at everything, it's also a way to drive for grants for brownfields with our, you know, new person in a position for, you know, looking at our environment. So.
all right, I'm sold. Because the one thought that came into my mind is we have the state or the feds come in and talk directly to the town how we want to do this, can you help us? And it's all handled by staff. Minimal involvement. You get one or two counselors maybe involved, an RTM member. maybe if you're lucky, if that doesn't get put out for the rest of the RTM that is happening. Yeah, I think it's definitely important to include. Yes. Here. Oh, take care of that.
So, 7, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm just gonna make in my notes that we ended on page 14, talking about the disposition of non-town owned property process. Were we done with that, or did we?
Yep. Well, the first read, as we said, but now we'll. Yeah.
Would we want to push on and just take care of those last 2 sections so that we have a full document done? The disposition of town-owned property process, which I think I would say we can consolidate with everything prior to it, or just keep it to the PRUF shall be created and follow the RFP policy.
I have to go. My ride's out there.
Oh.
And I would really like to participate in this.
I think we should.
You know,
Yeah.
We've done what we set out to do.
Yeah.
So I will motion at 18:57.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Dunn,